soy sauce, Parmigiano, Iberico pork, dried mushroom, dried seaweed, fish sauce, tomato puree, oyster sauce. What do all these ingredients have in common? Besides the fact that they're all incredibly delicious. They're all extremely rich in umami, the fifth flavor, discovered and named by the Japanese biochemist Kikune Ikeda more than 100 years ago while he was researching the Japanese dashi. Why does it give such distinctive enhancements to flavors? And he found monosodium glutamate and named this sensational flavor umami. So today we're going to do one of my favorite late night snacks, the umami fried rice. We are going to try to cram as much umami as possible into this dish and achieving a wonderfully balanced flavor. Very simple. We'll do this in a two-stage process. Because we're going to cook the rice from scratch, we can introduce some umami in liquid form, aka making a dashi. And then we'll slowly incorporate all the other ingredients, including somehow the Parmigiano, into our fried rice. Let's do it. So first, we make a dashi. Very simple. Dry kelp. The white powder, by the way, is crystallized MSG. So never rinse it when you make dashi. We add some water. You want just enough water for you to cook the rice, so you don't need that much. And we simply bring this to a bare simmer. Once you've reached a bare simmer, and you don't want it to boil, stove off, we add our katsuobushi, dried shaved tuna, again, full of umami. And we leave the stove off and let it steep for 5 minutes. All right, after 5 minutes, we take out the seaweed and the katsuobushi. You can save the seaweed to make a salad with just a bit of ponzu. Now, to take the dashi to an even higher level, we're gonna build a third layer of flavors by adding some dry shiitake mushrooms, which I've rinsed. These will impart even more umami to the cooking liquid for the rice, and we'll mince the rest and add them to our fried rice afterwards. They go in. And we bring some heat back to let them simmer very gently until they've softened. While that's happening, we rinse some brown rice. You can use white rice for this as well, but for fried rice, I always prefer long grain. So sushi rice or borio rice, that'll never work because they're too starchy. Now, to prepare our rice cooker, we're going to introduce the Iberico pork or any form of ham in 2 stages during the cooking of the rice to give some flavors and to oil the bottom of the pot. And the second time, we'll dice it and add them to the fried rice. So round 1, we really work the pork fat into the bottom of the rice cooker. Perfect. Rice, drained, they go on top. We form one even layer. And the ham, they go on top, including the fat. Of course, we'll discard them and use fresh ones for the fried rice. So, we switch off the stove and let the dashi cool down naturally. You want to always cook your rice with cold liquid, not hot liquid. I'll see you in 20 minutes. All right, our dashi is back to room temperature. All we need to do now is we grab the mushrooms and we squeeze out the excess liquid. And we'll cover this with cling film and we'll mince them tomorrow so they don't dry out too much in the fridge. To cook the rice, I mean, you can scale it, that's even better. 2 cups of rice. Whatever you don't use, you make a nice soba. Now we add beautiful dashi to the rice. Once again, you try to form one even layer. We're going to soak this in the dashi for 6 hours before cooking. Now, normally you discard the liquid that you use to soak brown rice, but I've tried it both ways, and trust me, this will impart so much flavors deep into the grains. So this now sits for 6 hours. After soaking for 6 hours and cooking for 1 hour, we have this wonderful umami rice. Now, all we need to do is we remove the ham, thank the ham for its service, and we give this a mix As you can see, the Iberico pork fat we rubbed helped the rice at the bottom brown a tiny bit. And we want to separate them into the individual grains. Now, to take this to the next level, before the overnight rest, we take a tray. I mean, if you have a big enough fridge, take 2 trays. And we try to form as thin a layer as possible with the rice. So we allow the fridge to dry out the surface even more. Wonderful. Now, this goes into the fridge, and tomorrow we'll come back and make some fried rice. I'll see you then. All right, day 2. This is what you get. Umami rice that is dry on the surface thanks to the overnight rest in the fridge. This is good to go whenever we are. Now, as you can see, we have umami scattered everywhere because A, I don't have enough packaging, and B, I don't want to do the washing. But let's check out which candidate needs pre-processing. I've identified maybe 2 or 3. Most importantly, the Parmesan cheese. 36 months aged, full of umami. But I don't want melted cheese on my rice, and if this goes into the rice too early, it'll burn. What we're gonna do, we're gonna take a page from my good friend Damian and make a crispy Parmesan and add that to the rice at the very last moment. So we have a beautiful microplane, present from my viewer, believe it or not, and we just grate our cheese. If you haven't checked out Damian's gnocchi with crispy Parmesan, watch it now or after this, incredible. Microplane is one-way traffic, by the way, yeah. Going this way means nothing, so it's always forward. Decent, we'll eat the rest. Now, we've got a non-stick skillet, medium heat. Once the skillet is hot, we add our shaved Parmesan cheese. You let them slowly become one crispy layer. Now, the other candidates that requires pre-processing, the soaked shiitake from yesterday, we simply dice them. Of course, we kept them whole so that they don't dry out in the fridge. And then we have the Iberico pork that my missus was kind enough to not finish last night. So we have 3 slices. And just because of the gazillion potentially fishy elements that we're introducing, a tiny bit of grated ginger. Perfect. Nothing is fried rice, or at least not my fried rice, without scallion. White for flavor, green for garnish. We'll put these 2 together, just because they're both watery. They go in first. Perfect. Stove off. Plate. Line it with kitchen towel. I mean, because we're crumbling them on top, it doesn't need to come out as one piece. But the fact that it almost did is a bonus. We season our wok. If you have a non-stick, you don't need to season it, by the way. Pull away the excess fat. Now, the mushrooms and the scallion. Because a lot of the umami content are very heavy in salt, so we're only gonna adjust the seasoning once we finish. So at this point, we're not gonna salt. We cook to evaporate the water content, concentrate a bit of the sweetness and complexity from the scallion, and develop a bit of deep flavors for the dried shiitake. At this point, the Iberico ham can also go in. Lower the heat a bit so that it doesn't burn. Now, one of my personal favorites, salted anchovy puree. You can mince whole anchovies yourself as well, it's up to you. Full of umami. Next up, tomato puree. I mean, in Indonesian rice dishes, they add a bit of tomato, so it's not rare for fried rice. Again, well, I'm gonna stop repeating myself, but last time, umami bomb. And these, you need to cook out a bit. The rest, they don't have much to evaporate. But just because we can, I like to add the XO sauce now. This really is the start of the show. Dry shrimp, dry scallop, anything you could think of that is full of umami, they're inside. And because they're made by frying, by definition, they do not introduce moisture. Be generous. I mean, I could just eat this with a spoon. Rice. Look how dry they are. They're already full of umami. Now once the rice goes in, you can really max out the stove. And we mix everything to coat. Oh, so beautiful. And you just want to keep moving them. A, to heat them up. B, to evaporate the excess moisture. And C, to make sure they're in individual grains. Grated ginger. Now, once you're satisfied with the texture of the grain, we lower the heat a tiny bit. That's when we introduce the wet element. First up, straight from the supermarket, Worcester sauce. Full of umami. Next up, soy sauce. Again, these burn, so be careful. Very good. Amazing. Now, next up, oyster sauce. Beautiful texture. Next up, fish sauce. Everything's in. You just want to evaporate whatever moisture that was introduced by the wet elements. Now we're getting drier and drier. As you see, not much evaporation happening. Scallion in. That's it. Complete. Crispy Parmesan will be made. Snack nori. Full of umami. You know those ones you buy from Japanese supermarket. Last but not least, chimito garashi. And there you have it. Umami fried rice. I really hope you enjoy.